neither Iran or the United States want to fight each other. It's the Israelis who have been trying to pull the Iranians and the Americans into a fight.
Netanyahu's greatest dream in life is a war between the United States and Iran.
Netanyahu will drag him into the abyss. He wants this war in the Middle East come hell or high water, and it's not in their interest.
What war?
The war with Iran.
We don't want to go to war against Iran. I don't think we should be fighting wars on behalf of Israel.
Make it clear to Netanyahu that he should not be dragging America into war with Iran.
If they start talking to you about fighting a war with Iran, you treat them like an enemy that they are.
We should not go to war in Iran on behalf of Israel.
Against the war with Iran. It's not in America's interest, and many Americans will die, and billions will be spent on a war we don't need to fight.
Everybody wants peace, except Israel.
Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes. They want to kill him. Look, he's enemy number one. Look, they also tried to kill me, but I'm his junior partner.
When did
they understand that President Trump is a great threat to Iran's plans to weaponize nuclear weapons and use them.
It's Tel Aviv. Tomorrow it's New York. I understand America first. I don't understand America dead. That's what these people want. They chant death to America. So we're doing something that is in the service of mankind, of humanity, and it's a battle of good against evil. America should and does stand with the good. That's what President Trump is doing, and I deeply appreciate his support.
In a world flooded with paper promises, gold has been a consistent truth. It's held its value for thousands of years, and today, with everything shifting, the demand for gold is climbing fast. The BRICS nations are now signaling plans for a basket of gold-backed currencies challenging the dominance of fiat money worldwide. That's why I think Opawica Explorations is a company that should be on your radar. They're exploring for high-grade gold in Quebec's legendary Abitibi Gold Belt, one of the most productive gold regions on Earth. Their properties are surrounded by some of the biggest gold mines in Canada, and right now they're launching a tremendous new exploration program, a major step in unlocking their potential. Listen, no one can predict the future, but these are the kinds of projects that have built real wealth when the timing aligned. If you're someone who believes in the timeless value of gold and sees where the monetary system is heading, Opawica Explorations at currently 11 cents per share is worth looking into. You can learn more at the link down below or visit opawica.com. That's opawica.com. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Monday, June 16th, 2025. Out of the Matrix into Prime Reality. Thank you for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube. And thank you to our wonderful moderator, Ronnie, for being here with us again, and everyone in the live chat. All right, let's dive straight into it. You have seen what has unfolded on the screens. The vast majority of us see it on the screens with Iran, Israel, the United States, the back and forth, the deployment of ships into the Middle East, the calling back of relatives of U.S. personnel from the region. For all intents and purposes, it seems like a full-blown war might unfold between Israel, Iran, with the participation of the United States. That's where it stands right now, according to the news. And when something like this begins to unfold, people tend to forget how we got here. So this show today is about looking into documents that were released a long time ago that show that this particular way that this is unfolding was actually planned down to a T. And also, at the end of the show, we're going to take a completely different perspective that I think we need to take into account as well. So let's look at this here first. All roads lead to Iran. This is, oops, sorry about that. Here we go. Let's look at this together. I want to talk about something that some of you might be aware of, others not, something that's called the Project for the New American Century. We have to go back to the year 2000. This was actually founded, the think tank was founded in 1997, but in the year 2000, they released a strategic paper, a document. And looking at it in hindsight is specifically interesting. Now, I first became aware of the Project for the New American Century right after 9/11, maybe early 2002. And back in that time, I was blown away by what the document outlined and what was unfolding right in front of our eyes. This was a neoconservative think tank. You had sort of the some of the typical people that you'd expect in such a think tank on there. You had Paul Wolfowitz, you had Dick Cheney, you had Donald Rumsfeld, I believe Condoleezza Rice, and other people who were later in the Bush administration. And they basically laid out the strategy for the United States, for the new century, for the 21st century, and what the United States would have to do very specifically in the Middle East. And they released a paper, the Rebuilding America's Defenses paper. And they identified a number of nations that needed to be changed, or the regime needed to be changed, that needed to be controlled or taken over. And those nations were Iraq, Syria, Libya, North Korea, Russia, China, and yes, Iran. There's actually a famous video that resurfaced later and keeps circulating on the internet that shows General Wesley Clark, who was very, 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 very high up in NATO but back in the day, when he described what happened after 9/11, and when he sort of echoed this plan of the Project for the New American Century. Let's play this clip here just to refresh in our memory.
After 9/11, about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Finishing off Iran. Now, while there was a lot going on in Iran over the last 20 years, obviously we haven't seen the scenario play out in 5 years. But even though we're in the year 2025, if you look at the trajectory, the scenario is still playing out. This think tanks and other think tanks and sort of what people might call the deep state, and I really don't like to use this term because it's the power structure behind the scenes that is not Republican, is not Democrat, is not left or right. They don't care about these things. They use these things, but they don't care about them. So in this Rebuilding America Defenses document that was released in the year 2000, Iran was framed as a long-term threat. And it was said back then, over the long term, Iran may well prove as large a threat to U.S. interests in the Gulf as Iraq has. What happened to Iraq? We all know what happened to Iraq. There are likely, and these are the unconfirmed numbers, but likely 3 million people died in the course of the latest Iraq war. That's not counting the first one in the 90s. And so Iran was already built up as the future adversary. And as a matter of fact, we need to even go back to the 50s, the overthrow and the the coup in Iran that happened back then that actually built up Iran over decades as this looming enemy that's always there, and the boogeyman that sort of we can always come back to when we need someone to blame or when we need someone to create fear and worry and doubt. Iran, if you look back before the overthrow in the 50s and before the regime change, that was a confirmed CIA and other intelligence agencies operation, you will see that it was a completely different nation, actually one you and I would like to visit. But anyways, let's get back to this document here. So here's what the document from the Project of the New American Century said. Even, and this is the year 2000, once again, even should Saddam pass from the scene, bases in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait will remain permanently. The implication is that Iran, rather than Iraq, was the longer-term justification for a permanent U.S. military footprint in the region, which is, of course, what happened. It also said Iran's acquisition of nuclear weapons could well prompt strategic competition with actors like Turkey and Israel. So basically, they were building this up as Iran being the justification to expand bases in the Middle East, to expand defense systems and whatnot. And these are the things that were outlined by the Project for the New American Century in the year 2000 that all came to pass from this famous defense strategy policy. The regime change in Iraq, that's what they were calling for, came to pass. And they were calling for it before Bush was elected. Let's remember that. Global missile defense expansion came to pass. Permanent U.S. military presence in the Middle East came to pass. Militarization of space and cyberspace. They were actually calling back then for a new military agency, the Space Force, that was then established in 2019 under Trump. Interestingly enough, those were all sort of neoconservative things, but they played out in both Democrat and Republican administrations, so that really doesn't matter. Increased defense spending. We are at $1 trillion. That's the United States defense budget. $1 trillion. Now you do the math, how much that is for every man, child, and woman. Incredible. And of course, U.S. as a global policeman, we all know this is the truth. This is happening all over the world, and this is what we're seeing. So this all came to pass. Okay, so now let's fast forward to the year 2009. This is where it gets eerie. In 2009, the Brookings Institution, another think tank of which there are so many in DC and around DC, released a document which was called Which Path to Persia, Persia meaning Iran. It discussed ways to infiltrate, overthrow, or militarily change the regime in Iran again. But now let's look at this here. This is really the kicker. I'm sorry, we're getting there. There's a few more quotes here that I actually wanted to point out. In this document by the Brookings Institution, which again includes, CIA analysts and people that are close to big institutions in government or have later served or before served in government. Here's some key quotes. A strike, meaning from United States perspective, for the United States to strike Iran, a strike would only be likely to work if it were perceived as a legitimate act of self-defense. It would be far more preferable if the United States could cite an Iranian provocation as justification. Manufacturing that case would be very difficult, but not impossible. Regime change has the greatest possible benefits, but also the greatest risks. The best way to promote it might be covertly by supporting dissident groups inside Iran. So these are all quotes from that policy paper. But this is the one that really stands out, and that was Chapter 5. Now listen to this. Chapter 5 was called Leave It to Bibi, meaning Benjamin Netanyahu called Bibi. Now, this is 2009. What happened a few days ago is, according to the world's media outlets and the governments, is that Israel launched strikes into Iran's nuclear facilities. Under whose leadership? Bibi Netanyahu's. This was 2009, and Netanyahu's been around for a very long time, but he's been gone also, had legal problems and whatnot. Yet they somehow knew that even 16 years later, Bibi Netanyahu would still be the one who would take care of this. And what this policy outlined was using Israel as a proxy. It's kind of in the Ukraine and Russia, war. It's kind of a similar thing. So basically, it would mean that the United States would encourage or allow Israel to strike Iran, and the U.S. would publicly distance itself but benefit strategically. Isn't this kind of what we saw over the last days? And afterwards, the U.S. may need to step in to finish the job if Iran retaliates. And here's a quote: "The United States could essentially subcontract the mission to Israel while publicly distancing itself." This is, this is the big kicker in this. And when you find these things, and when people do, find these documents, and you can then so pinpoint that none of this is spontaneous. None of this is happening on the fly. None of this is some threat that's coming out now or that's intensifying. This is all a long-term strategic plan, a very long-term strategic plan. I want to show you this here. This is directly from the paper, where it says the United States would encourage and perhaps even assist the Israelis in conducting the strikes themselves, in the expectation that both international criticism and Iranian retaliation would be deflected away from the United States and onto Israel. So this is the thinking. This is the kind of thinking that is pushed through multiple layers of influence into the halls of Congress, into the respective administration, into the White House, into the advisors. These are the voices that are whispering at all times. And here it's sort of black on white, isn't it? There's also this infamous constant, it's kind of like the climate change thing, where they started with, global warming, and sea levels would rise and whatnot. And every year somebody says, we have 12 months, we have 3 years, we have, I don't know, according to Al Gore, we're all gone. We have been for a very long time. But here are the claims about Iran. And this has been going on since the 90s. So they're going to have nuclear capability in 3 to 5 years. That's what they said in 1992. And on it goes. In 2010, Iran could produce a bomb within a year. In 2012, Iran months away. In 2021, Iran closer than ever to nuclear weapons. In 2024, Iran dangerously close to nuclear bomb. And in 2025, Iran days away from enriching uranium from a bomb. This is straight out of a script. And this is the script, how threats are being built up over long periods of time. And you just bring on these experts onto Fox News and MSNBC and CNN, and they are serious, and they're telling you that the latest intel from the intelligence community is telling us that Iran is days, minutes, possibly seconds away from becoming a nuclear power. And then the whole charade, the whole shit show starts over and over again. It's always the same thing. So I want to give, for this particular section about the Brookings Institution, thanks to a guy called George Christensen at Nations First Oz on X. Thank you for uncovering the Brookings Institute thing. Go look him up. I appreciate that very much, because I wasn't aware of that particular piece of paper. And interestingly enough, when we look back into the project for the new American century, this was even back then in the environment back then in the year 2000, they knew the project for the newest American century, and everybody knew that making all this happen, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Lebanon, Sudan, Iran, would be impossible. And they put that in their document. They put the quote in the document. It would be a very, very long process unless there is another cataclysm event like a new Pearl Harbor. So that's what they wrote in 2000. What did we have in 2001? We did have a new Pearl Harbor. We had 9/11, which allowed for the Patriot Act, which allowed for Afghanistan, which allowed for Iraq, and basically gave the justification to storm into the entire Middle East and just keep going. Now, people thought and were thinking that what we're seeing now would never happen because of a new administration. And I would say the more things change, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And it would still seem that the same groups that have steered the entire power structure are pulling the strings here and are setting the stage for a massive escalation. Okay, so this is as far as the news goes, as far as the documents go. We can see that there was a clear plan, that it was uniparty, not Democrat, not Republican, because in the Brookings institutions, for example, you have quite a lot of Democrat influence. In the Project for the New American Century, it was more neoconservative, more Republican. Doesn't matter whatsoever. It's one party, folks. It's not your party. It's their party. So this is the news side of things. This is the document side of things. This is just to show how we got here. But then there's a whole different perspective. There is, and this goes deep into the structuring of reality, the creation of myths and stories over decades. The Project Mockingbird on steroids, where a reality is concocted and created that actually doesn't exist outside of the media realm. And here I'd like to remind each and every one of you of this very famous show that came out, I believe, in 1968 or 67. I'm not sure, but it came out in the 60s on a BBC called The Newsbenders. And it was at that time a live play that was created for TV. And what this 30-something minute show laid out for the audience in the 60s was unbelievable. With all the information knowledge that we have today, it seems much more plausible. And this is the other perspective that we want to take. So I'll play this clip about 7 minutes. Some of you have seen it. It's always a great refresher. And then we can talk about that perspective, which is, I think, is always important to remember as well. So let's watch this together.
Is the most highly developed form of fiction. The most difficult. Come on. I just want to show you something. There's no obligation to buy. Really. News requires imagination. News requires responsibility. We think you're well qualified. Please. "1973. We've only roughed out the news for 1973. Nothing's been given the go-ahead yet, but this is the kind of thing we have in mind.
Today, April 14, 1973. First historic pictures by Radstar of the combined U.S.-Russian landing on the moon. Shown here are Majors Webb and Mikhailovich taking their first steps into the unknown, firing their retro rockets to land their spacecraft on the dust-covered surface. A comforting note for us stay-at-homes, both the Pentagon and the Kremlin have announced that the moon has no strategic value.
A comforting note for us stay-at-home. I can't show you any film on this next model. We haven't photographed it yet. But this is the way it will sound.
June the 22nd, 1973. The State Department releases film of the ultimate weapon, codenamed Icarus. This satellite is equipped with a solid reactor. In layman's terms, it can freeze air solid, stopping all missiles, killing all forms of life. Icarus orbits at the same speed as the Earth, can hang in position over every major city that threatens the peace-loving nations.
Rather proud of this one. Please, sit down, Mr. Lutton.
September the 5th, 1973. A new phase in global warfare. War by example. At 4:32 our time, China took out the remote Indian border village of Bandar, unprotected by the Icarus network. After the first 2 5-megaton H-bombs have fallen, the 9-way hotline finally
Switch it off.
effect.
This is going to happen in 1973. You're going to make this happen?
No. We're going to make models much cheaper. Then we photograph the model.
Fake newsreels?
Fake newsreels. For the past 10 years, people have been looking at our fake newsreels and listening to our fake commentary.
And they accept it for the truth. And you can do it. Stop 100 people in the street. How many of them have actually seen a missile or a satellite? They're just told they exist and they believe it.
Yes, you're getting there. I knew you would.
Well, now the moon rocket and the satellite, that you can get away with. That's too remote for people to grasp. It's too far away. But, I mean, you invented this village on the Indo-Chinese border.
Oh, yes.
Well, somebody could check up.
Very mountainous territory up there. There'll be no survivors in 1973. No rescue work. Radiation scare.
Yes. You can do it. This could be the news for 1973.
Not necessarily exactly like this. We only plan in detail 1 year ahead.
Oh, you only plan 1 year ahead.
Hey, tell me, what is the news item that's bothered you the most in the past year, 1967?
Well, it has to be the new American intercontinental ballistic missile, the Boy Wonder, doesn't it?
Just the one I asked him to set up for you. The new ICBM, codename Boy Wonder, with a much-talked-about Mercury warhead. I haven't any special effects up here, but perhaps with the proper sound. Blast off. And Robert Larkin, television director, high IQ, 35 years old, is scared. Scared by nothing. It doesn't work. It's a scientific impossibility. The same goes for the much-talked-about Mercury warhead. Perspex.
If this rocket doesn't work, then the others?
They have a fireworks party at Cape Kennedy almost every other day. Well, you didn't really believe there were all these things whizzing about up there, did you? Sputniks and rockets. Astronauts crossing their legs for 8 days.
How long has this been going on?
Since Hiroshima.
And the H-bomb, you mean, that doesn't work either?
Right. Dirty.
Very, very dirty.
What was your first reaction? Relief. Yes, it has to be relief. Only 12 people are allowed beyond this point. Most of them work in the photographic department, taking phony newsreel pictures of our models and processing film and so on. Sit down, please. Ah, pretty pictures from our stills department. The Boy Wonder.
When did it all start?
1945. You may remember the Americans let off their 2 atomic bombs. Well, they didn't want other people doing the same thing. I mean, you do see that, don't you?
Oh, I don't know.
To scare the people off, the Americans put it up that the atomic bomb was halfway along the line to something much bigger, the hydrogen bomb. It didn't work. They spent 5 years in negative research.
Well, what about the Russians? They're supposed to have quite a pile of these things.
We were surprised when they started their tests. Then we got a few feelers from their Secret Service. Nowadays, we work very closely together. Oh, all these stories about spies going off to Russia. Mr. Philby, remember? Just good copy for the Sunday papers.
Good copy. Well, the Chinese, I mean, they've just announced their bomb.
Yeah, we played along with it. We recorded their phony explosion. We're rather hoping the Chinese will come along, complete the pattern, you know.
In Vietnam, hundreds of people are being killed every week. Well, you can't do that with your models.
No. And you can't kill people of bad habits in 2 generations. They like to carry rifles. They like to put lines on maps. And we let them because we control the situation. There's no danger of world war. Just a simple choice for everybody. Capitalism or communism. Strawberry or vanilla. It all adds up to the same thing now we've got rid of the big bangers.
Well, how can you be sure that Johnson, Kosygin aren't working on other things? Poison gases, bacteria.
Pathetic, man of your intelligence. You don't want to destroy the world, neither do I. What makes you think that presidents are different?
Well, they've made some pretty good stabs at it in the past.
It wasn't the right sort of control then. Nowadays we know better. Politicians are easy to control. The grosser mentality boys who like to be photographed getting in and out of Daimlers in Whitehall. They come right at the bottom of our organization. A few rungs up the ladder, there are the people in the top secret factories. Just those in a position to know they're making weapons that don't really work.
There must come a time when somebody wants to use one of those weapons. I mean, somebody is standing there with a finger on the button.
Well, that's the beauty of it. Nobody presses the button. We control all the crises. We build them up and we shut them down.
We? Again?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. Near the top of the hierarchy, there are the economists, top civil servants, top brass in the military. Those men who are supposed to view the nuclear tests and so on. And above them, CWNS.
Right at the top. Classified World News Service.
The Classified World News Service. This was from the infamous show on the BBC, The Newsbenders. It's aired in 1968. And I've seen this clip many, many times. I've edited it. Just have so much contact with it. And still every time I'm blown away if we put it in the context of 1968, right? If this would air today on any show, like on any, Netflix show, whatever, nobody would really, shrug their shoulders. But it's 68. And the question here is why I wanted to include this clip is the question that we need to ask. And I can't say that we know is this exactly what we're watching? Then you go and, you wonder, but they are going to war, right? I mean, there are war zones in the world. There are deaths and there are killings. And I don't believe these are fake. I don't believe that what we see from Palestine was fake. I don't believe that what we've seen, at least partially from the Ukraine was fake. And like he said, these are controlled war zones. These are allowed to happen. But when it comes to the big things, when it comes to the threat of a nuclear attack or all these things, is there really containment? Are things really under control? And is all this just theatrics for the masses? Watching any news clips today, and I do it regularly for research, even in the intro, if you go back, there was a clip in the intro of this show where on Fox News, Bibi Netanyahu was asked about whether the Iranians have tried to assassinate Trump. And it looks so fake, just visually so fake. I don't believe this is Bibi Netanyahu. Maybe the entire guy playing Bibi Netanyahu is not him. Who knows? But it is always important to zoom out into the 40,000-foot view and consider the possibility that 95% of what we see never happened, didn't happen in that way, or is constructed or misconstrued. I mean, all of this has to be a possibility in our minds, given how much we know about today's possibilities with AI. You can create a war on screen that looks absolutely real. You can, through algorithms, silence any truth voices that might come out and say nothing is happening, which, by the way, we have seen this in quite a few conflict zones, not the least LA, when the riots happened a couple days ago or last week, people were saying this is only a couple blocks in LA. The rest is completely calm and functioning normally. And so that's kind of the other perspective. Should we not take this seriously? I think we should, because the problem is, even if these hostilities are just scripted and not really unfolding as we're told, the perception that the vast majority of the people are having is stress, worry, fear, doubt. That's what they want, right? That's exactly where they want people. So our intention has always to be find the truth as good as we can, but come from a balanced place and raise the frequency, right? Continually raise the frequency. That's why we added this perspective. That's why I think we need to have truthful discussions. And that's why I'm just so fed up with the fake alternative media who just goes on the talking points, who doesn't show you this stuff, who doesn't go deep into the documents and goes, hey, wait a minute, this is not new. This has all been planned out. They're just going for the lowest hanging fruit. And so, you know, I would tune out of those voices because they're only there to keep pushing people in one direction, to keep making this dividing people, dividing Democrats, Republicans, dividing religions, and all that crap. And if we can one day step over that threshold and actually reach out to each other, you'd see that we probably have all much more in common than people think. And that maybe the Iranian people and the Russian people and the Chinese people are not the evil monsters that are so often they're made out to be, because they're not. All right, friends. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us. It's always a wonderful journey to take with you every day. And we also wanted to let you know this is a soft announcement. Kristin and I have decided, based on your unbelievable feedback on 2 shows that we did a while ago, the After Awakening shows. As you might remember, a lot of people find themselves after the spiritual awakening, after the awakening, in sort of a state that's empty or void, not knowing how to move forward, not having motivation, not having inspiration, seeing the fakeness, not knowing how to move forward. So we decided to do an online retreat. It's called After Awakening. It's going to be the 2nd weekend in July, and we will open registration in the next few days here. So I just want to let you know this is coming up, and it's going to be a wonderful 2 days together. All right, friends, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us. You know, we love you. We appreciate you, and we will be back with you again very, very soon. Your environment shapes everything, your thoughts, your health, your energy, but most people never question the invisible field they live in. We did, and that's when FLFE found us. It's not a product, it's a field of pure life force energy that lifts everything it touches. We now live in it 24/7, and we would love to invite you to experience it too. Start your free 15-day trial now. No pressure, no strings attached. Just the truth, resonance, and peace.